Dear brothers and sisters, our country is going through a lot of troubles now, and I have a couple of things to say so that we begin to help ourselves to see how we can get out of this mess. Last time I did a video, I think it was broadcast on Equinox and on their popular program, The Inside, and a friend of mine from the U.S. He wrote some comments back to me and said that the ideas were great, but because it was the first time that people were getting used to that kind of a concept, it was probably better I should just say exactly what it is so that people get in a nutshell. Cameroon is a republic. That means we have a government, and that government has the power to do things for its people. And that government, we have the executive, we have the legislature, and we have the judiciary, which in a republic are supposed to be independent of each other, and sitting above that is the president, who controls everything and the people. The power comes from the people and is given to the government and the president and the government manage this power on behalf of the people. This power can be moved from this central position down towards the periphery using different formulae, and the proper word to use is decentralization. So when you say decentralization, you mean that power is moving from that central position and is going towards the periphery. But that word decentralization is very tricky and confusing. When we say decentralization, it means different things to two different people. It means one thing to people who are in power and want that power to be centralized, and it means totally different thing to other Cameroonians who want more power at the periphery. And this is very important because it determines everything else that will be happening in the nation. But we must realize that whatever we call it, the state is not the nation of Cameroon is not broken down. There's nobody living as such. It's still one unit, but we're trying to define the formula under which power and resources should be shared. Now, that said, federation as it existed in Cameroon, it was there for a short while, and the reason why we had the federation was because we had two states. Listen to me and listen well. We had two states that came together. There was the state of West Cameroon that was coming over from Nigeria, and that state of West Cameroon had independence in 1961. Then there was the state of East Cameroon that had independence in 1960. When you talk of a state, you are referring to a people with a culture, a way of life, and they have geographical territory. That's what you mean by a state. So people of West Cameroon had all these things, and people of East Cameroon had all these things, and they came together and decided to live together as brothers and sisters. It was not an act of war. Now, and it was supposed to be a love affair. Now, but somewhere along the line, the things got blurred, and the concept of state was being wiped out, and that's where these problems are coming from. Now, to be able to still go back to the old and make sure that the boundaries are well defined, we have to use a new term, a new tool that got mature in the last 50 years or slightly more than that, and that's the term called confederation. Confederation is very much like federation, but it's slightly different. And when you say confederation, it brings on board some specific things that will never be missing. It's like cooking your soup and making sure that there is salt in it. It doesn't matter what it is, there must be salt in it, and it is that salt that makes the specificity of confederation. Now, federation and confederation are like cake and bread. They are like cake and bread. You cannot say a cake is a bread, but they are all made of flour. But there's some specificities about each of them. That's the thing. So when we are talking about a federation, it has to do with a breakup of one nation into functional units. It's a breakup of one nation into functional units. That is very important to keep in mind. While a confederation is not a breakup of one nation, but rather a coming together of independent states to form one nation. That is where the difference lies. A federation is the tool that is used when one solid nation is breaking up into functional units for better management. A confederation, the starting point is that you have two states that decide to come together and live together. That's the main difference. And therefore what we need in Cameroon is not a federation but a confederation, so that we can we can keep our individual differences, as they are, and still see how we live together and manage our lives together. Now when you come together under a confederation, there are a couple of things that you agree on. First, you stay apart. Everybody has got his or her police force. You have your education, you have your health services, you have your own money, currency, you have your own economy, and you have your prime minister. Because under these circumstances, the two states cannot have presidents. There's only one president in a republic. State will have a prime minister. Each state will have their state parliament and state assembly. But there will be a national assembly, a national government with national ministers. And in this case, when you have a president coming from this state, the vice essentially comes from the other state. And the president or the speaker of the house or the president of the parliament does not come from the same state at any time with the president. And in our case, we might agree, for instance, that if we have the presidency with the Anglophones for 10 years, after 10 years it goes to the Francophones, and it keeps rocking like that. And we say again that if a president is an Anglophone, the vice is a Francophone. That way it creates for stability. Now then something crops up, the budget. How do you manage the budget? Each state is supposed to raise her revenue from her natural resources and for work or whatever they do to raise money. Then a determined percentage of that amount of money is supposed to be sent to the central government for running of the national issues. And those national issues that are jointly run are the army and big things like the airways and the shipping lines, big concerns like that. And then money that is made from these organizations are also shared, Local administrators and parliamentarians and all, they are not appointed. They are voted by the people, so that the people have control over them, and these people have some kind of a respect towards that people who can put them in and take them out anytime. We are not saying decentralization as understood by the government of Cameroon now is wrong, but it's a concept which, once we have had our two confederal states, then you can bring the concept of decentralization and fit it and inject it into the confederal states to make the Southwest function independent of the Northwest. Thank you very much. I hope it helps.